Evening, welcome to the Selectmen's Meeting for, what is the date?
26th.
February 26th. Could you lower that, please?
I'm sorry, I was just testing it. I was putting it back on mute. Thank you. I
Thank
apologize.
you. Call the meeting to order, roll call, please.
Windmiller is present.
And Sue Licio's present, I think. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to make a note that the meeting is being tape recorded. Anybody else taping it? No. And chairman's additions or deletions, Jim?
Negative.
None. Public comment period. Anybody here to talk? No, okay. Appointments and hearings. 6:10, Kathy is not here yet. Let's, hey,
Call and see if she's here.
well, see if she's planning on coming up for the,
Because she is, we're just a little early. Oh.
yeah, we're a couple minutes early.
Who's gonna text her?
Okay, so we have some budget hearings. Kathy, Jim Smith, Mark Mercurio. There she is. And then the Housing Authority. Kathy, we're all set as soon as you're ready.
Already be a done time.
Has the meeting started already?
We're just getting ready to text you.
We're almost done.
Seriously?
Well, there was no public comment. We finished the preliminaries, so
Okay, let me just find my list.
that's all right.
Jess is gonna pick for me tonight because my granddaughter didn't, she's getting at that age and she was too embarrassed to be on TV. Can I tell you? So, this is my assistant Jess, for anybody who doesn't know her. She doesn't own a dog, so she can do this.
She has no dog in the fight.
Yeah, exactly. No dog in the fight. Okay.
494.
Drum roll, please.
I don't know how. Jim, do you know how to do a drum roll?
494. It's a puggle, named Puggle, owned by Ann Wilson, North End Road. So, Ann, if you're watching, we will be calling you to let you know that you're officially the winner.
And what did you win?
And she won the #1 tag and a dog blanket, which I forgot to bring up, which is really cute this year.
It is.
So, yeah, so it's kind of fun.
Nice.
And while we're on the subject, you only have till Thursday before the late fees start. So March 1st, late fees start, $10. So please come in and get your dogs licensed. Great. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, you want some money, I hear?
Some money? Well, just your normal money.
Budget.
Yeah, just the
Just a
normal.
little.
Yeah. No big increases or anything this year.
So you find the town clerk, Madam Chair, on page 44 of the document. Or if you're Joe Shaka, starting on line 132.
Thank you for putting the numbers, that helps.
Chair, can I just offer a kind of a
Please.
preface? For a lot of these budgets, nearly all of the budgets that you're going to be looking at, where there's a salary shown, if there's not a collective bargaining agreement or a personal service contract that dictates otherwise, there is a plug of the salary grid being grown by a 2% COLA and a step to the extent that you're entitled to one under the plan if you're not already at max. That is not meant to be etched in stone in any way. It was really there just as an illustration point to show if we did that this year, what the effect on the bottom line would be. So for Kathy, she's not asking for that. I plugged that in there just to be consistent with what I did every place else. I just didn't want you to think Kathy was looking to grab a 4.5%
So
raise.
it's not defined by,
Oh, yeah.
if it's not defined by a personal contract.
Right.
Or a union contract.
Correct.
You've plugged in, basically, I don't want to say worst-case scenario, but the
Highest.
fullest amount
Yeah.
that they could receive under COLA and STEP.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Thank you. And you want it if we give it to you, right?
Sure,
Okay.
I guess, twist my arm.
And you have a reduction on the new employee? Because
Yes, but that's still an unknown amount because the union.
Right, it could go up. There is a COLA and a step built in there, but she's just started at the lower amount than what
Okay.
the previous incumbent had been.
Okay.
So ultimately, there'll be a decision for the board in terms of presentation. If at the end of the day, COLAs and steps, or just a COLA lives, you'll need to decide how you want that shown. Do you want it in each respective line as it shows in this draft, or do you want it all in a separate, not the B word, not the bucket word, but if you want it in a separate line
salary
item,
account.
reserved for, contract adjustment or salary adjustment or something. So either way you want it, we can do it.
I don't know yet.
So,
Do you have any opinions on that?
So we're talking about for the contract ratification?
yeah, if there's a change in salary for people that are,
We have all the contracts.
everybody's open, correct?
Okay.
So do you want to leave money sitting in the respective lines in their budgets where
They
it will
can see what's
ultimately go?
plugged in, basically.
Or, we're talking a public process, so they kind of know anyway.
Yeah, I
But,
know.
the other side is just put it all into a reserve for contract or salary adjustment.
I think I'd rather go the latter.
So it's easy enough to pull them back out. I mean, the back page on the document shows what that total carrying cost is, so.
And that would be rolled up into everything, right?
Yeah, everybody, every line, every position that has that would be pulled.
And then everything would
And
be
there'd
totaled.
Right, and there'd be one total,
Bucket.
not bucket, line item, or special article, depending on your pleasure.
The only downside that I see to that is when you're looking at individual budgets, it's difficult to have an appreciation for how much of the budget is impacted by salary increases or, for heavy on the personnel side.
Sure.
To look at personnel versus expenses in comparison to others. So that's kind of the downside. So we just,
Whatever you guys,
That doesn't matter.
it's your document, so.
yeah.
And that's not specific to Kathy's budget, it's just
No,
while we're
it's
talking
not.
about, I want to.
Sorry, Kathy.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. I did have one thing. In your election stuff, you have, what, one election?
We have 2 elections scheduled for next year. We have the presidential primary in March, and then we'll have the annual election in April.
You don't want to put aside some extra in case?
Do you think there'll be another one? What would it be? I believe in budgeting for what we know, but that's,
We were talking the other day about a possible debt exclusion for roads. So that would entail a town meeting vote and an election after that, wouldn't it?
but when would that election take place? Would it have to be
After
at this
town
fiscal
meeting.
year or next fiscal year? Next fiscal
It would
year.
be in this fiscal year, because it would still, we would need to do it as soon as possible in order to be able to capitalize on the paving season if we could. So it would be in this fiscal year, not the one we're talking about next year.
So
it'd
it
be
would go
more-
on this election? Could it go on the annual election?
It couldn't because that would be before. I mean, you can do it before, but you generally don't want to because people will see that without having had the ability to have it debated and explained.
Okay.
And they might just be inclined to say no out of the, out of a kind of a default without doing it after the fact. So
And usually you have the discussion at town meeting and the okay at town meeting, and then have the election.
But if that would be this fiscal year, then it wouldn't matter for this budget.
Right.
So
Good point.
we would have to,
look at a year-end transfer
yeah.
of some sort,
So-
if it passes town meeting.
Right, because we'd be having it this fiscal year, yeah. Is she gonna have enough for this year to do that?
No,
No.
we'd be looking at a
Year.
year-end transfer,
Okay.
municipal relief transfer from.
Try to come up with the money there. So it wouldn't be on this, it wouldn't be this budget, anyway. I don't know, the way things go sometimes, you just don't know if,
Right,
I hear what you're saying.
yeah. I was always taught you budget for what you know. And then
Yeah.
if something else comes up.
Okay. How's your training taken care of? Is trainings all embedded in your budget?
Training for.
Like any kind of training?
Oh, I see, yes, that's.
Training for you and your assistant?
Yes. Yes, that's all in here.
Conference line 142 is conference.
Is that one conference, Kathy?
No, we have 3 major conferences a year. There's a summer, winter, and a fall conference.
And that covers it?
And that covers it. And then we have a couple of Middlesex County breakfasts, but, that's short money and it's covered.
Okay.
I don't usually spend a lot of nights at a conference or anything, so I'd rather travel.
I don't have any questions.
No,
You?
I'm good. That's an easy one.
You're all set?
Nice and easy, thank you.
Okay.
Joe, you
Good
have a
enough.
question?
Just for FYI, at our last finance committee meeting, we voted to give our imprimatur to Kathy's budget. We voted to approve Kathy's budget.
Okay,
Okay.
income okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Jim, you're up next. You all set?
Hope so. Give it a shot.
Well, I was hoping you weren't gonna jump over the chair. And where does Jim
You'll see
start?
page 52, line 547.
So are we going with the requested or the recommended?
Oh, yeah, we gotta start putting the titles in up there.
Yeah, carry them across. Well, I think the only difference you're gonna see between the recommended, the request and recommended is I put in the
Salaries.
the salary adjustments that I referenced already with the board a few moments ago. So I think you can stick with the recommended, which is the third to the last column from the right.
So same story on the increases?
Yes.
The personnel?
That's correct. There are two different things happening in this proposed and recommended. You'll see under the operators in the notes column, there's an addition to the step and the COLA upgrade being contemplated from one operator position to a foreman. You'll recall we had a foreman position budgeted a couple of years ago, and hasn't been budgeted since, and Jim's made the decision this year based on workload, operational considerations, and well, he might have an inclination towards somebody, there's a union process to follow, but he'd like to move forward with re-establishing that position.
With an employee within the department.
Right.
Anything else that we should be
Yep,
aware
and
of?
the recommended increase on the line 551 from the current 17 hours for admin support up to 30. And Jim would be better to speak to that issue than me perhaps, because he's down there every day.
Yeah, that's an increase to 30 hours a week. She's a great asset. She does a lot of work. She does a lot of grant work. She's currently working on the Bixby Bridge culvert. It's a grant for $200,000, I'm sorry. She did a lot of work on the Greenville Road Bridge that we got approved for, $500,000.
That's great.
So she worked on that as well. She spent 30-plus hours on a grant for FEMA, the storm response grant, which come to $28,677 that she submitted. We're just waiting to hear back. So she's quite busy with that. She's attended 2 or 3 workshops, for grants and such. But she's a great asset. I know probably 15 years ago we had a full-time assistant, and it seems like we should be looking forwards, instead of going backwards.
What you want to make sure of, though, is that
She also does the, Chapter 90, the funding,
yeah,
storm water mapping. She does a lot, which helps me considerably, so I can focus more
you
on
can go out and
roads.
see what everybody's
Dirt work.
doing and
Fix
stuff,
all the potholes that just.
Right.
and more.
Permanently.
And more to come.
Hopefully. So. And then there was the uniform allowance. There was 1,000 added to that. That's for the new truck driver that we had hired.
Is that a union position?
Yeah. Entitled to a clothing allowance under the contract, it just hadn't been.
After the probation.
Yeah, it didn't exist last year.
So if you scoot down to expenses, we got energy with a 9.6% increase,
Why?
with a difference of 1,320.
Why? 9%, is that what everybody's coming in at?
No, it's more of a dollar issue looking at year-to-date stuff and what's projected for next year. You'll see,
Energy going up.
yeah, I think 2% is what other departments are carrying on. You'll hear that actually from Mark in a little bit when we get to some of the bigger energy lines. But in terms of actual consumption down there, this is a more accurate hit for us. Professional services, Jim, you want to touch that?
Yeah, that's,
A whopping 133% increase.
yeah, we're asking for 3,500 with a difference of 2,000. That's for vehicle inspections. That goes up every year, the service, the mobile service. Let's see, the vehicle inspections, the fire alarm, and the backflow testing, the fire extinguisher inspections, cleaning services, police details. We found that we were over budget on that. Everything seems to be going up. We got more people coming in, thanks to Mark.
Sorry.
But if you want to be compliant, so.
What do you mean by more people coming in?
Well, more vendors, like the backflow testing and the, with the.
There are things that we hadn't been
yeah.
doing that we're supposed to have been doing that Mark and Jimmy have been catching up on. So,
Oh my goodness, I don't even know where it is. like the song, Sherry.
Well, thanks, I'm embarrassed now.
Sometimes we need some levity, though, that's okay.
I hope the,
So that's a catch-up thing. I'm glad you brought up the OSHA and all that.
Yes.
I'm wondering if our departments are going to need additional
Something that's-
protective clothing, or, you know, I don't know what kinds of things you need protection for, but things that we maybe have not always done, kept.
Yeah, I think our building's pretty well up to code. I think we're gonna have a walkthrough.
Do you know
Tom.
when that's gonna be?
What's that?
Do you know when the walkthrough's
I
gonna
do
be?
not. I do not.
It would be really good, I think, if we could have somebody walk through, the person that did the training, you're saying is...
Right.
Is gonna do that?
Is willing to, yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be great, because...
I think so, too.
It'd give you an idea of, are you missing some things?
Right.
And then, you know, before we go to town meeting on this.
Sure, yeah.
Because that, again, is another catch-up kind of item.
Right, yeah.
Jim, do you think we could arrange that?
Absolutely. And I did want to draw your attention, this is a newer version, but back in the very front page in your budget, I did tuck in an additional amount under line 18. There's a reference to training and then OSHA, just for lack of a better place to put it, because we don't yet know how it's going to fall out in everybody's respective departments. There is an additional amount added there, which would be for compliance issues with OSHA, be it training or equipment.
I thought it wasn't called OSHA, but you said.
It's not
That's what
technically...
people know, so.
It's like OSHA rules, but it's done by the state.
Okay, I just wanted to
The
make sure.
state will come out and do a free, they don't charge us, they'll come out and do a walkthrough for them.
Yeah,
As well.
so I think we should avail ourselves of whatever they,
Yeah.
you know, they can do. And that's gonna help you, but it's also gonna help us know what it's gonna cost in case we do have any catch-up things.
Yep.
The only thing I'm not quite sold on is the bump up to the 30 hours, but
Really?
we can talk more about it.
would
Well,
like to.
it's a significant bump. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand why, but it's a significant increase of hours. I don't like to add hours generally unless there's... You need to know that there's going to be that kind of work on an ongoing basis.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
don't want to hire somebody permanently for a number of hours and then have, you know, peaks and valleys of work either,
Yeah.
so.
It's quite an operation, you know, within that department.
But
You know, there's a lot for me to do.
I think with just the grants that you wrote in a short period of time, I mean, we're not talking,
But that's not, yeah, that's not just all
I know,
that
but
she does.
But Dwayne's,
No.
but Dwayne's point, that's 50 times, that one Greenville Road Bridge brought in 50 times this $10,000 increase.
yeah, and I'm looking forward to more grant applications like that to fund the road projects that we've been talking about too, because
Right.
there's got to be money out there for that as
Right.
well, so I think it's short money for what we're getting out of it.
You know, and she's doing all that, answering the phones, residents coming in, you know. If I'm out on the road, you know,
That's actually
Looking-
worth some discussion,
dealing
too, Jimmy,
with-
is that one of the things that's changed pretty significantly since Ed Kukula, as the prior superintendent left and Jimmy took the seat, is it, how many hours did you put in this last month in plowing?
I plow every storm, but I put 30 hours in one storm, you know.
Ed used to not do that. So Jimmy's actually, I think we're trying to manage where his experience and his value is. And if he's got a route, we're not paying a private contractor to come and do a route. So if Ed might have been in the office doing some of this
Yeah, he
admin work,
was, yeah.
you know, we're picking up on the admin work on this side, but we're saving on the backside with him out doing the work too, so.
what I was thinking though is, the person was hired to do basically clerical work. We're lucky, this person happens to know how to do some grant writing. I'm wondering if other departments couldn't also share the grant writing responsibility and maybe look at that job description a little differently as well.
It's actually, you'll be hearing from Mark on his budget in a little bit. The balance of 30 being requested here up to max 40 hours is a 10-hour delta that Mark's looking for in his budget, largely for that purpose, looking at facilities grants. We've got, a facilities department that is a full-timer, a part-timer, and a part-timer. And we have assets, many of which have been donated to us, that we're trying to stay up on. Sometimes we don't get quite as far as we need to. One of the things that I know Mark and I talked about with the request for admin support there would be, because Lee is in that position right next door to where Mark's office is located at the highway garage, she'd also be able to work on facilities grant paperwork as well. So if there are issues for handicapped compliance, handicapped accessibility grants that we'd otherwise be looking to the taxpayer for, if she's able to write the grant for that, there's even a further
Is
benefit.
grant writing in her job description then? to this
No,
point?
It's
that's what I'm saying, we hired her as a clerk.
And that's a separate issue. She's currently being paid at a department assistant rate, which is not even remotely close to what the value is that we're getting out of her in terms of her deliverable.
What I would suggest is that it sounds like looking at that job description and seeing what the job description should really say, and then figuring out hours. Basically what we're saying is we're potentially hiring a part-time grant person. And I see that as a need for the town in general. Okay, who that part reports to is another story, though.
Okay.
Okay?
Just to add to that too, speaking of residents, around town, a lot of the complaints with the highway department is not being able to speak to somebody when they call and want to.
Getting a record.
And want to place a complaint or a concern,
Yeah.
and she's there. But, now if she's only works till noon, I have to come back. You follow me? So, I just think that would kind of cure that as
I have a question
well.
for you. I can't remember why, but I was looking for your website. Do you have a website?
We do, and actually Lee just fixed that today. There was some discrepancy, I think, on a pothole recently on Warren Road. And somebody had claimed they put an
Email.
email. Well, that email was going nowhere. It wouldn't alert anybody. I'm not the computer guy, I'm a dirt guy, so it wasn't, nobody was getting it. Well, she found it today and fixed that problem. So now we get alerts. So when I come in the office in the morning, it alerts me, and then I can read those. So that was actually a big help today too,
I know the last time Ed had done, when Ed had done the original survey, road survey that we're waiting for, do you hear anything about when that's coming by?
Soon. We reached out,
Good, good, good.
got half of it back.
But Ed had that out on the website, and that, I think, is what I was looking for, was the old version, but anyway. Okay. Carolyn?
The complaint forms?
If it's
No,
okay,
there's
just,
actual-
if you don't mind me saying, before he got his admin support in there, I was trying to help. And the Baker administration, God love them, they're giving us a lot more money, a lot more resources, but the paperwork has increased for everything. Whether it's the small bridges, whether it's Chapter 90. I was kind of shocked, just the difference in the 3 years, the amount of paperwork that has to be done and submitted, and then they're being held accountable more for what they spend.
Yeah.
It's
And it's Chapter 9 is changing again.
changing again. And
So
Hopefully it means they're gonna give us more.
hopefully it's easier.
And even to apply for the
Less
grants.
paperwork.
You have to have everything broken out now, all of your expenses and everything, every
Right.
time that you're putting into everything.
Yeah.
And for reimbursements the same way, so the paperwork's probably doubled since Ed was
Yeah.
here.
You should have saw the FEMA paperwork.
Oh, I know.
It was 30-plus
I
hours.
was
It was unbelievable,
It is.
the amount of time that you had to spend.
The energy stuff is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So,
Well, think of all that paperwork is giving people jobs, so. Well, I'll think on it. I will
I appreciate that.
take that into my consideration. Sounds like my cohort here is pretty well convinced.
Can I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
sure.
I'm Joe Shaka on the Finance Committee. She's working 17 hours now.
Correct.
How many hours is she split between admin and grant writing roughly? On average?
I couldn't even really tell you. I mean, she does it in the course of the day. I mean, between answering phones and residents coming in, you know.
Probably has to split up.
It's
It's-
usually.
You think of a half-time grant write position and a half-time admin position? So actually pay appropriately for the grant side and pay the admin side where it is?
Yeah.
That's definitely, I think, a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, somehow, it would be great if you could quantify how much time she spends on different kinds of things,
I'll work on that with you.
you know?
Okay.
I mean, we used to do that all the time, and people hate to hear tally sheets, but sometimes you need to do it just to be able to know where your time is going. And you only have to do it for a few days to get a feel for it,
Right.
you know? But it helps you to try to figure that out, I think. So you let us know,
Absolutely.
evolving process here. It's funny because I just saw something for housing. MMA had something out there for all kinds of grant things, but I couldn't even understand what it said. Never mind, think about what they required, so.
Oh, I'm glad she got some of the stuff we got for that, because
Yes.
that's a huge
Yeah.
offset.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Money would
big
be-
help.
but I'd look at the job description as
And going over
well.
that Greenville Bridge,
It's a lot of money.
yeah. For a tiny little bridge.
Yeah.
But when you look at the pictures of it in your packet today,
Mm-hmm.
oh my. It's pretty scary looking.
Really?
Yeah, the photos are in your packet today from the grant application and the award letter. I'm surprised that it's lasted in the condition that it's in.
Yeah, some of it's downstream. It is, you can see it.
Oh, goodness, okay.
The only other thing, Madam Chair, that I bring your attention to is, again, on page 53, the snow and ice budget. As you know, it's the one thing we're allowed to deficit spend in the Commonwealth, because you never know what Mother Nature's going to give you. But I think it's been 3 years running now that the request has been to try to incrementally bump this up, so we're not getting hit with $400,000 year-end overages, but try to, get a little bit closer. I mean, no one's, I think, in their right mind would suggest we try to fund, $400,000, because once you lock that money into that line, you can't reduce it in a subsequent budget year. But you'll see this year, it's an increase of $17,000 that's being programmed into the snow and ice. So you'll see $10,000 in line 581, temporary help. And that's driven in large part because we've had a change. There's now the third change in the 3 winters that I've been around, where cemetery and parks had been performing certain snow removal functions, and they were, I think most recently, the agreement we struck last year was that they were going to do the municipal lots and sidewalks, and we had a meeting probably a month or 6 weeks ago or
Yeah.
so over at one of the commission meetings, and they don't have the resources or the staffing to continue with that, so that left Jimmy having to pick up another private operator to take the workload that was otherwise being done by cemetery and parks. So when you see the additional 10 grand added into temporary wages, temporary help, line 581, and then an additional 7 being added into the equipment rental, line 587, it's doing two things. It's more accurately reflecting the need based on the change that we had with cemetery and parks. It's also being true to continue to try to incrementally bump that budget up a little.
Yeah, and I think you're missing a total there, Jim.
Yeah, the 17,000.
Yeah, because I was looking for the 17 and then
Yeah.
realized
Yeah.
I would have to add the 2.
I actually just wrote it while I was looking at it.
You all set?
Yep.
You guys all set? Jerry, Joe?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can I just
thank
touch on one other
you.
thing?
You sure can.
The new line item, I don't know if you'd noticed that one,
Yes, sorry,
I'd just like-
line painting.
for the line painting.
It's going to be
It's to
line
10,000.
574. Line 574.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
What that's for is, we restriped Route 13, repainted it this year, and all the crosswalks throughout town. And it come to about 10,000, maybe a tick over. I feel that Route 13 probably needs to be repainted, every other year, for safety reasons. It's hard to see at night. The crosswalks, we paint every spring. On the off years, I'd like to get back into, and this is, just something I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see some of the side roads start to get lines painted, I don't know about you, but it's hard to see at night for me.
But as soon as we get them all paved, they're gonna have pretty lines on them too then, huh?
I don't know.
That'd be something we would try to
If
work
we
in.
budget that in.
Yeah, one thing we
Never
talked about
budgeted
is
in cents.
one thing we talked about at the last joint meeting was to not throw paint down on roads that we're going to be ripping up and repaving. So just making certain that we coordinate that work.
Right, but like Townsend Hill, it's done from one end to the other. South Row Road, that's another one.
So the ones
So,
that we've recently done the reconstruction on.
Old Turnpike Road, Mason Road, those are all, I don't know if you've traveled them at night, but it's hard to see. It's a safety thing. Even if you just put fog lines, and it seemed like it's something that we've steered away from doing. So I'd kind of like to see us heading in that direction.
So Jim, on that one, we really should have 100% in that increase line,
Yeah.
because that's a new item.
Yeah, there are going to be several places where you'll see that I blew the formula away because the formula that you showed me last year, how to show that I've already forgotten how to do.
Okay. Wayne can show you this year.
Okay.
When you're dividing by 0? Yeah, that's all.
Legit.
The other comment before Jimmy leaves, when you talk about painting the streets and you talk about particularly the fog lines, the white lines on the edges,
Yeah, I like those.
part of doing it though is you have to remove what's called the overburden, where over the course of time, the dirt and the sides start creeping in. And it's just been brought to my attention, Jimmy attended a meeting with the Board of Health. Historically, anytime we've removed overburden, we've brought it down to the transfer station, to the old landfill site, and been able to stockpile things down there. And there may be an issue with that going forward. The Board of Health, it looks like it might be taking the position that they don't want that being done any longer. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention that that might be something you hear kicking around a
For
little
what
bit.
reason do you know?
I don't know. I wasn't at the meeting Jimmy went, he just told me today, so.
Wetlands, I guess, they have to pay to get rid of the material. They just don't want to pay for it, I suppose. So.
Well, you're talking about the wood they have to pay for. They're generally not.
No, it's the wood, if we pick up tires on on the side of the road, we do get called quite a bit.
So-
And they have to pay for those, I understand.
But again, we are the town, so if highways out, which they are more than anyone else, out and about, they see a tire on the side of the road and, we want them to pick it up and get it disposed of properly. The place as a town that we do that is the Board of Health down at the transfer station, the recycling center. And if we start working cross-purpose with one another and saying you can't bring your tire here, highway department, unless you pay
What it
us.
sounds like is that, yeah,
So we just got to, I just wanted to put it on the radar screen with you because.
Thank you.
I think
gotta
there's
get
going to
some
be a
stuff.
meeting, from what I gather, with you folks, and so we can all sit down and figure this.
Okay.
Thanks.
Surprise.
Thank you.
Any trees that come down across the road that highway removes, or if the tree warden is involved in removing, historically, again, they've been stockpiled down at that location. For whatever the thinking has been, they've been chipped and hauled out that way. So every couple of years or so, a tub grinder is rented to come in and grind everything down. So there's a concern apparently about doing that again, and whose expense that should be. And I've never really gotten
What are they gonna do? Separate the trees that you bring versus the trees that we bring?
Yeah, I've just never understood the left
Yes.
pocket, right
These are
pocket.
highway trees, these
Same pair of pants.
Okay, I'm looking
Still-
forward to that discussion.
I know you weren't thinking about bringing that up tonight, so.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but
Okay.
it's just something to
Thanks for
think
the
about.
warning.
Thanks, Jim.
All set?
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
John.
right. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks. Mark, you're up.
Good evening.
Come on.
How am I come up?
Come on, get the hot seat.
No, Jim just said that. I'm not sitting there.
Oh, I do have a question. But it's for you more.
Yeah.
Who, is Jim salary or is he hourly?
So,
Salary, okay. I just wanted to make a note on the,
yep. Facilities you'll see beginning on page 46, line 233.
Can I stay?
Yeah.
Do I need one?
Same thing we went over, so.
Okay.
46.
There will be a little bit more detail on the next iteration. I do have it on a standalone piece of paper, but I haven't rolled it into the budget yet. But you'll recall we've had discussions about breaking out energy, supplies, building supplies, groundskeeping, what other one? Mark, help me out.
Professional services?
Professional services, right, just to show, yeah, so we got energy, utility, water, professional services, and building supplies. There'll be sub-lines in each of those to give an accurate accounting of how much of the facilities budget is dedicated toward particularly the building that houses library, senior center, and the meeting hall. You know, for instance, the energy line coming in, that's line 242, coming in at 76,500. A full 62 of that tracks toward that building alone. So just so people have a sense of context. Well, Mark's budget as facilities will show that full dollar value. That what's as a percentage, what's 62 of 76?
A lot.
A bunch runs to that facility. And again, it's common sense. The number of hours that they're open, the size of the space, will tell you that it's gonna use the lion's share of that expense. And then
So
additionally,
much for all the computerized stuff being more efficient, huh?
maybe it is.
Well, it is, but the building has a lot of glass. Glass really doesn't come with an R rating. So if it's zero, and we are working on reducing, we have a installation of a certain device right now in some of the breaker panels to even out some of the harmonic imbalances in energy. And that's all I can tell you because it's above my,
Do you know what that means?
Yes.
Except, yeah, it's voodoo to me too, so if you want to take a crack at it, let us know.
It's just making it more efficient. use
Right.
of the incoming, so.
But we're also looking at like the HVAC and all that over there anyway, right?
I think we're close to, with the exception of the one coil and
that's exactly right. So we're just waiting on the coil,
the one that burst in the,
senior center vestibule.
right. And then everything should be.
Everything is back up
Operational.
and running, and hopefully moving forward.
Yeah, so at that point, once everything is copacetic, we can have an outside somebody that's not associated with anything that's been done or likely will be done, come in and give us that
Audit.
top-to-bottom assessment, audit of exactly where we are in all of our,
I think you indicated the energy committee was handling
yeah,
that part of it.
that's
Okay.
something that the company that you and I spoke about would, there's a local guy that's actually involved in that company. He's familiar with the with the buildings, and they'd have the capability of doing that, and that'd be worked through Brent and the Energy Committee.
So, that doesn't have to go out to bid?
They're on the state bid list, so they're a state-approved vendor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they work with Enstar, Unitil, all those.
And a preferred,
Yeah, we
they're
had-
state bid list and preferred vendor of all the utilities as well.
Yeah, we had the lights and everything done.
Yeah, this is a continuation of the
Yeah.
green community piece of it.
Yep, good. Okay,
10,000-pound alligator in the corner, what was it again? Gorilla?
I don't know, elephant.
Admin support line. So that's showing at line 236. So this is the contemplation of the additional 10 hours of Lee's time. If she were to go from 17 to 30 for Jimmy, this would be 30 to 40, so the additional 10 hours would be on the facility side.
So that becomes a full-time position.
It would be at the 30. No, 30 is, under that contract, is full-time, yeah. So at 30, it would be full-time, but at 20, it's benefited. So the only real incremental difference between 20 and 30 or above is the pro rata share of vacation and sick and the other benefits under the contract.
So that's 100% in that little thing.
So same, along the same lines, I'd like the three of you guys to come up with
Exactly.
that job description and what it looks like and smells like in the
Yeah,
hourly.
no, absolutely. Yeah, this
So-
this would be the same thing.
Exactly.
So in this proposal, if you will, the proposal is 10 hours of clerical for the facilities.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes,
So is that a total of 40 hours that she's looking, that she's looking at,
30 with highway, correct.
and 10 with you, so that's
Correct.
40, so it's a 40-hour position?
Correct.
So is that, did she get an hourly, or did she get, or are we?
It's hourly.
She's hourly.
She's hourly.
Yeah.
So this wouldn't change that
It would
union
not.
type thing, or, no?
Well, no.
no.
I was going to go someplace that doesn't make sense.
How much
No.
of your request was for her to do grant writing versus to do clerical stuff?
3/4. So I want to go after sustainable energies. One of the things I've had a little difficult time doing is at the police station, I want to get a solar carport like they have in Ashburnham. Save on plowing, save on some of their cruises, and it's directly south. It's perfect locale for 5, but I've gotten estimates over the years, but it's a lot of time invested, and if I'm doing that, I'm not doing something else. That and stuff like on the MMA side, I'd like to reach out to Constellation or Muni Energy and see if they can give us a fixed rate over 3 years of energy, electricity, and have a better going forward. I think Carol and I looked at it many, many years ago when Greg was here, and it's a lot of paperwork and, I'm sorry?
A lot of the plastic companies do the same thing. 'Cause-
Right, we lock in for 3 years, and then we could actually project our budget more accurately in 3 years.
And you can get a lot of rebates out of that too.
And again, that's right.
So
That's something she could be chasing.
I guess I'm going to pull that back a little bit, though, because just like we said that Brent and the Energy Committee would be looking into what might be more efficient at the Library Senior Center, I would challenge our Energy Committee to look at the things that you're
Sure.
talking about.
Yeah, the difficulty
okay?
is they don't have staff like a lot of other committees.
But what I'm suggesting is that it not be working for facilities maintenance, but more, I can see that grant person or that grant piece working more with the Energy Committee.
Well, across the entire organization, I think that goes to
This
the
is-
point
this
that
is what
Wayne
I'm
and
saying,
Joe were
you
both
know?
saying, which is take 40 hours and say how much of it is clerical admin, which it's currently rated for and being paid at, and that's that piece. And then how much then is grant, or would yield fruit being a grant person townwide.
But so my point is, 10 hours for admin support for facilities may not be where we want to put that 10 hours.
Agreed, I think that discussion has changed this evening as we've sat
Okay.
here.
Right.
Yeah.
At least that's a note I took.
I think some of that 10 hours helping the Energy Committee to go after all of those energy
Yeah, it would be like.
assessments
For the
and,
grant writing piece of it, you'd be employed by the
The
town.
town, correct.
As opposed to a separate department.
right,
Yeah,
right.
I think that makes sense, particularly if she's already doing it under the auspices of one specific department.
I think it's a
Right,
good
you just
conversation
split
to
it
start
out.
having, because it's,
Right.
we're obviously getting money out of it, so.
Right.
But to split that out, you know, so is there, if the 10 hours in your budget is intended for her to do that kind of grant writing, then you have no real need of someone to do regular clerical, because you take care of your budget and stuff anyway, right?
Right,
Okay.
and the admin assistant for you guys, Carolyn, does the bills, does the billing. I submit all my bills, Jim signs off on them. And other than that, it's just all the new OSHA paperwork to be compliant. The EAP, the MSDS sheets are a little overwhelming now. We spent an hour making copies and this morning for a backflow test yesterday, uploading them, scanning them in, and
But to your point, Sue, if there's a subcomponent of that 10 hours that would be grant writing that Mark is specifically interested in, but benefits the whole town, that whole 10 hours wouldn't live in facilities. Maybe 5 of it does.
That's my point.
Right. So maybe 5 lives there, and 15 lives in highway, and 20 lives in grant.
but
They
there's-
all benefit from.
Right, for grant writing.
Right.
What I'm trying to get at is, does he need clerical support?
That's what I'm saying, maybe the delta's just 5 on that. But Jimmy and Mark and I will sit down and
Okay.
we'll.
I think it's good
we'll beat that
dialogue to
up
start.
between now and your next meeting and get a better sense of it.
I mean, I can see them knocking down her door, to tell you the truth. Lots of folks.
Myself included.
So then the next problem's gonna be how to prioritize all their grant writing work.
Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. What's our bottom line here? Well,
Up 18 grand in facilities, if all of that stuff above were to fly.
so, all of this facilities budget, I've heard back and forth about charging the different buildings for, like, their utilities and stuff. I can see splitting it out, but this is all inclusive of all of our electric bills and all of that
Right now,
stuff?
correct, yes.
Okay, all
Yes.
right.
With the exception of Carol and Chicken Hurley Memorial Hall. Which ones?
What's included
I'm
in
gonna turn the heat
facilities
off
is
'cause I'm
Memorial Hall.
She just turned it on.
It's freezing, sorry. Memorial Hall, Recreation, Library, Senior Center, and that's it.
So it's like this common here, this,
Yeah, everybody
And the
else
library
has it,
senior
but
center.
it's in there.
And the
Okay,
complex.
so that's important, that's an important distinction. What Carolyn said is, it's this building, it's the library senior center and the recreation
Correct.
In the
building.
garage.
And the Muni
Those are all
garage
the expenses in the
and
Muni
the
garage.
hot library is just electricity.
The Hart Library is just electricity. But, so the fire stations, which we have 3 of right now.
Their own.
Technically
are there-
4.
Have their own, and
Police.
Police has their own.
what about,
Water has their own.
and cemetery and parks has their own building? Okay, so they were all self-sustained.
Now, this begs the bigger question, Sue, about when facilities was created 3 years ago now. It seems like it was kind of a stopgap, but not really ever fully implemented. Because it's toggled back and forth in the short time
It
I've
has.
been here.
It has.
Between
We've had this
expenses-
conversation.
Expenses having been pulled out of the fire department budget brought into facilities, that money was used to pay salary for a facilities coordinator, but then no money was backfilled for the services and work that was supposed to be done with that money that you pulled out of fire. So it was kind of, it was really, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me how it was done. So I think that during this next fiscal year, we started it already in the discussion with the library trustees. Do you want the money to live in your budget? So you see it, you control it. They voted no, we want it to be in facilities. We should really be looking at, are we going to centralize everything under one department?
So
And if
what
so, let's
isn't?
pull the other things.
What isn't? It's the fire department.
Fire,
And police.
police.
And police.
Fire, police, highway, cemetery, parks, water. Water is an enterprise anyway, but, I mean, the only things that are under facilities is this campus
And the library
the
campus.
library.
Yeah,
Campus.
so,
So it's kind of a hybrid right now, which it never fully
yeah,
became.
I think it deserves a discussion. And it deserves a discussion because just even thinking about it, I think, well, there's what we call utilities, town utility bills. That's one bucket, okay? But when we say maintenance, facilities maintenance, that's another thing. That's like labor and equipment with which, labor, equipment, supplies with which to repair, replace things. So that
Professional services, so you have
Right,
landscape,
contractual.
you have.
Cleaning.
Cleaning, and then you have all of the contract services, whether it's fire
Fire
alarms and.
Fire extinguisher,
I
right.
mean, it doesn't look like that's ever been laid out on the table.
Well, I don't know if I would be a little nervous about, other than the fire department taking care of maintenance on their,
No, these are contracts that we pay.
oh, okay.
You have to have
Yes.
companies come out and do the testing and.
Okay,
If something's.
good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we're required by law to test the fire alarms twice a year, backflows, fire extinguishers are once a year.
Okay,
I think there's a difference too. Mark and his crew does all the labor for all the buildings.
yes.
The expenses only cover what we were talking about for energy and professional services and things. So Mark will do over at the fire department, whatever they want to do, they just happen to pay the vendor's bill versus it coming out of his.
A good example is we did a door down in Booking for the police department.
Yeah.
The bill for that door, the supplies, the labor was on the town. The bill went to the police department, so they pay that bill from
It's
Mackey's.
a weird animal right now.
Okay, well, we'll talk about it sometime. Not today. Joe? Jerry, you're all set? Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Oh, I know.
Almost.
No, that's right. Well, same question. Are you salary or
I'm hourly.
hourly?
Yep.
Which line item? Is that
Coordinator,
coordinator?
233.
So that's Mark.
A couple of years ago, I added the parenthetical for U or N for union and non-union. Do you want another? Bless you, if that was a sneeze. Do you want another one added for salaried or hourly? People don't understand exempt and non-exempt. I heard the whisper under the breath over there.
Exempt, non-exempt, yes.
So salary to hourly, I mean, we could do that if you think it would help people.
Well, I'm going to ask the question, so. Okay.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask the question. Townsend Housing Authority, hi there.
Hi,
How are you?
good, how are you?
Good. Where are we on the
Housing
map
Authority,
here?
you will see on page 54, line 648.
Wow, a budget, huh?
Chaz, I'm gonna give you this to follow along. 'cause
I just first wanna, this is the first time that we've done this, so this is our maiden voyage, yeah.
It's all right, it's fine.
So you guys fit into the big budget book, starting right there and going on to the next page. So, Madam Chair, what you'll see there is support staff. The ask came in at 15,000. If you take our department assistant position in the comp and class plan, it comes out to roughly 17 hours a week at the hourly rate of pay for department assistant. There had been an ask at the very bottom of that page, 651, for $35,000 for professional services for a study. That, in my version here, has been backed out, and there's a note in the file for a warrant article, which is
Yep.
more appropriate for that type of a one-off deliverable instead of a recurrent operating expense.
You understand that, Charles?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the rest are pretty self-explanatory: training, office and general supplies, and some travel mileage.
That 17 hours is for what?
There's, actually, this coming year, it's going to be a lot with regards to, we're going to be writing portions of the affordable housing plan that's coming up, and that's putting that all together. I know that I've been doing a lot of the writing. I just need somebody to be able to put it together and send it where it needs to be sent. There's information that we'll be putting together for the DLTA grant, ongoing things. So it's kind of centralizing our agendas, our minutes, all of that kind of stuff.
Kind of thing with Beth does for planning.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, and I wanted to open up the dialogue too in regards to that. I know that in the past it was the land use coordinator was assisting in that, but we've never really had a budget, and it's never really been formalized. And you know, the thought was that, you know, if we can centralize that, as far as the planning and the land use and the housing authority. I'm not going to use the word bucket, but
Don't use the
Another
word
bucket.
Yeah.
I think to Chaz's point, some of the discussion had been that while the land use coordinator's position description lists all of the boards and commissions that the position supports, it never listed housing authority. And it may be that Karen, when she was here, was just doing it. It looks like that was the case. So the idea, to Chaz's point, had always been, if there's going to be a budget and there are going to be hours allowed by town meeting for admin support for the housing authority, that it would be centralized in that office, because
correct.
that's the place that this type of a thing would normally live.
So how's that come out with what we have now in there? Is this an incremental, or is just this another way to split up the money?
This is new. This is
Okay, so what do
this is
who do we
above.
have in there now? We have, for
right now you've got,
positions.
right now you have the planning assistant, the conservation assistant or administrator, and the conservation agent. And then above that, you have land use coordinator, the resumes of which are being gone over currently.
All right.
So the thought had been, I think, looking at additional hours for one of the positions that currently exist. 17 would put them both over what they would be allowed to do under Fair Labor Standards without being compensated at overtime. You know the hours for, off the top of your head, for Lindsay and Beth?
They're in the proposal thing, but
I think Beth is 30 hours, and he's 25.
Yeah. So 17 for one of them would blow them both over.
or possibly make this just another person too, but
You could.
15-hour person maybe.
Well, and there's also the GIS that Karen did for us as well, for some of the projects that we were working on. You know, there's, that's also part of it.
I think they had a lot of volunteer work is what they got.
Yeah.
What they had between Karen and Kathy.
Yeah.
I mean, they volunteered the time.
Yeah.
So I think they missed that.
Who's doing the GIS stuff now?
Right now, GS is hosted through MRPC, and anytime someone needs access to the the GIS, they can view it on a computer. If they need a specialized map created, I know that Karen had done some of that when she was here. I've done some since she's been gone. Beyond that, we don't have anybody that's dedicated to the GIS function. If the land use coordinator position were filled, that person would have that. It does fall under that job description. You know, we had Michelle here for a very short period of time. It would have been her. So whoever the next incumbent is will have that under there.
We had, when we are working with MRPC, for instance, there are some times within their quote, they put in, you know, the GIS services, whether we're going to do it or they're going to do it, you know what I mean? So it can be parsed out either way.
Do you see this under the land use coordinator?
I think everybody had seen it
Okay.
as coming in under the land use
All right.
coordinator.
So you just want to formalize that?
Yeah.
We've been a satellite and we kind of want to be attached to the mothership, basically.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
I think the question is just at what number of hours, you know, coming out of the gate, and whether or not, you know.
I mean,
if,
to
for
me-
instance, if you got highway currently functioning at 17 hours for
Yeah,
admin support,
yeah.
the housing authority at 17 probably seems like a bit of an outlier.
It seems a little bit heavy to me. I don't think out of the gate, that's what you're gonna need.
Correct.
Presuming we have land use filled. Because there
Exactly.
is support that's expected. You know, we still have not revised the job description, which we've talked about, to include support for housing. But if land use were filled, which we expect it to be, and the job description amended, which we would expect it to be, there'd be some direct mothership support out of that position, and then the more admin support level stuff would be some number of hours, not likely 17, I think is the point you're making.
That's the point I'm making, yeah.
Right, and that I agree with, you know,
Yeah.
we need some kind of way to pull it all together, because there are some things coming up with some of the information that's been shared with me that I want to be able to put forth some grant writing to, so that
That word again.
when it comes in, we're going to need somebody to be able to administrate that, you know.
So,
Which is an interesting other point.
yeah, because,
A lot of times there's admin money associated with the grants.
Yes.
that's right.
So there's a percentage of that grant that you're awarded that is allowed for local administration.
Correct.
So some of them, not the bridge projects, like the ones we talked about earlier, but
I know, but,
Your housing or
you know, if
CDBG
we're
stuff.
potentially talking about a grant person that would be available for the town, then that piece of it might
Yeah.
come under it too.
I'm kind of glad these all got grouped together tonight because it kind of works out perfectly because you've just created a grant writing position,
Yeah.
full-time for the town, which is what I wanted to see
and
anyway,
the
so.
the way that develops out over time too is under the revenue projection sheet in this budget book, you would see income coming in as admin support for grants. You don't do it out of the gate because it doesn't yet exist, but next year, at this time, if we have had success and there's admin money that's brought to the table, then we know that as a revenue source going forward to support the position. There even are folks out there that will come in and, you know, they'll guarantee a percentage of, you know, they'll guarantee that they'll make their salary plus some multiplier.
Well, actually,
So I
you
think
can
adding
build
that-
that in, you can
But-
build that into a job description too.
But adding this request into the highway and facilities piece of that admin piece, I think.
Yeah.
To tie that all together somehow.
As far as the grant writing is concerned.
Yes,
Yeah.
the admin side of it, you know, but down there talking,
I mean, if you create, if we really do create a new grant writing position, then we have to figure out, well, you know, how does that get filled and all of that happy stuff, but,
The one area that I just want to say early on, a grant writing position that is predicated on receiving funding from its own labor, it would invariably, particularly because we're nearly entirely unionized, become a union position. And one of the caveats that I've negotiated in prior contracts on grant positions that are funded from their own labor is if they are unsuccessful in maintaining that cash flow, they're not guaranteed the job. Because you don't want to build it and believe that it's because it's not coming out of the taxpayer's pocket, and then, you know, you go 2 cycles without a grant, and now you're left with, well, we've got this X dollar position, and we now have to dig someplace deeper
well,
to fill
well,
it.
that was kind of my point in saying you build it into the job description, you build it into the expectations for that position.
And I'm just taking the next step, that also to the negotiation at the union bargaining table.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. So that's all new, but
So settling on some number of hours on admin.
on some number of hours,
Is the
and
open-
I see it as a little bit less than the 17, at least to start off. But,
And as far as that $35,000, that was the chair that wanted to put that in there. That would also be part of what we would be, that I'm approaching for grants anyways, to get that.
what, 35,000?
The
Originally a
The
budget
warrant
ask.
article?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
since been pulled out.
Yeah.
into the
professional
warrant.
services.
Yep.
I mean, that's something that we can,
That was pulled out because it was a one-time expense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
normally wouldn't carry that as a recurrent operating.
Yep.
If we can get the grant, that'd be great, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can get
In
the
the-
grant
in the
before
works.
before town meeting, that'd be even greater.
I don't think that'll happen, but.
Which town meeting?
I know. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
All right.
Anything else on the budget while we're,
Just 10,000-foot view on this version. When you go to education,
oh, yeah.
which you'll find plugged in at, give me a moment.
And it's appropriate for us to continue
Page
talking about
52.
budget, is it not?
Page
I mean, it's not
50.
an actual,
Well, I've got budget update under me anyway.
okay.
So you'll note that I've reduced the North Middlesex Regional School District assessment to that flat 5% that I had talked about. I've written the note hard line, just to make it kind of stand out there for what it is. So I just want to be clear, this isn't real. This is a target. Right now, this is about half of the increase they're seeking. So an increase of 527,500 versus the 1.1 plus that they're looking for.
And what did you have plugged in initially?
This five.
The five,
Yeah, this is
okay.
the amount that I had been carrying in my, very much in the infancy stages of this document.
What does it usually run?
Last year, I think, goodness, we were sub 5, and it's predicated, again, on enrollment. This year, they've got some things that they're looking to do that are cost drivers, and that's one thing that Brad, Superintendent, is going to be speaking about tomorrow in some detail. We did spend time on the phone today talking about some of the concerns. I've spent time on the phone and in writing back and forth with the administrator in Pepperell. They too are concerned about the size of this proposed increase in assessment. They have a bigger share of the operating
You
budget.
didn't actually say, what was it they were asking for, or they are at this point asking for?
They who?
The school, North Middlesex.
Right. For the town of Townsend, they're looking for an increase in our assessment of $1.1 million.
And what does that translate
Roughly
into?
10%, 9.8 and change.
Okay, so for something that's 50% of our budget,
Correct.
roughly,
Mhm.
okay, we're being asked to increase that by 10%.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of ways to kind of drive home the point. We are, if you go to the revenue projection section in this document, you'll see that we can raise roughly $560,000 in new taxes. And that's a combination of 2.5% and new growth. And all of that times 2 is really what's being asked for by the school in this increased assessment, leaving none of that growth or 2.5% increase in local tax revenue for the rest of the departments in the town.
Right. I mean, basically, it's half of our budget
He's looking to take all of our growth.
is, exactly. I don't think that's gonna happen. Do you think that's gonna happen?
Oh, I can't use the language I really want to use right now, but
Well, I just, are you going tomorrow night?
I am not. I can't tomorrow night. So.
Okay, so tomorrow night is the tri-town, tri-board meeting. So while we're together, it might just be good to make sure that that's the direction we want
I
to go in.
am fully in support of.
You like that hard line there? Okay.
And to
even challenge it a little more.
and to the superintendent's credit, I communicated the concerns, and he met with the finance subcommittee, he met with his administrative staff, and they've already begun cutting. He's not at liberty to say where they are right now because it's like this, it's not real, it's projected. But I expect to hear something very, very empathetic tomorrow night from him.
And does that include the money that we discussed last time about?
That's a little trickier. There are a number of ways.
Oh, yeah, that's a
there-
good one.
There are a number of ways that that money is being looked at, depending on who you speak with. So, to get an idea, you predict a certain amount
Well,
of.
let's back up and
I'm gonna
tell
do
everybody
that,
what we're
right.
talking
What
about.
E&D even is, right? So you set a budget, and that budget includes what you expect you're gonna spend. And then you have an amount of revenue that you expect you're going to bring to pay for all of that. At the end of the year, if you take in more revenue, or if you spend less, you have leftover money, which for the purposes of the school district is called excess and deficiency. We call it on the general government side free cash, which is the stupidest name I've ever heard, because it's
Not
neither
free.
free nor cash. Their E&D, they're allowed to carry no more from year to year than 5% of their operating budget. When they get it certified by the
And
state,
your operating budget is what?
oh, geez, goodness. I don't have it. I don't have it with me.
Because whatever their operating budget is, which is a lot,
Yes,
they're allowed to keep 5% of that, max.
right. And
Which is
any-
a lot.
And anything over that 5%, they have an obligation to put back on the table to the district communities. How that is put back on the table is the subject of some debate right now. You heard at the meeting that you and I attended when they had their public hearing, that the expectation is the budget that they've currently laid out in draft, for which there is an ask of us of 1.1 million more dollars, has built into it roughly $1 million in free cash that they're, E&D, that they're using to support their budget. So,
And
while-
that's where the money that they owe us is.
So that's what they're saying. They're saying, well, now that we originally
Well,
were
yeah,
going to
we
use $1
owe it to
million.
you, so we're gonna take it out of E&D, but we're still gonna keep E&D up at 5%.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
It's a
more.
game, I get it.
Or more. I mean,
Yeah.
Joe, you and I did this on Saturday before last, I think, and it made sense to me when you and I were talking, and then when I was driving home, I said, I don't even think that makes sense. So I think it deserves a good thrashing out tomorrow night to figure out how that's supposed to work, because if they were going to spend $1 million of E&D from the prior year, and then they learn that they have to give back to us, our pro rata share is $250,000.
They're shorting us
Right,
500.
why aren't we getting that
Exactly.
back? So I'm sure there's a good explanation that I just can't wrap my head around right yet.
Yeah.
Because that's the increase
Right,
I'm looking for, so.
right.
How much do they actually owe us from last year's budget?
They owe the 3 towns 4 something.
Yeah, our share is about 250.
So instead, they're applying it out of their E&D
You're saying they already gave it to the office.
toward this budget.
The office,
Toward-
and they're still maintaining, because I haven't seen the school budget yet, except for just the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still planning to have a 5% E&D.
Well, what Nancy said when she was explaining that to at the budget hearing was, she doesn't like it to be too, she likes to maintain it as high as they can.
It's nice.
I thought so.
Yeah, it's a nice bank account.
I thought so.
In fairness,
If
We-
something happens, I mean, really,
but again, we struggle in this, and I'll show you that other change I made that you asked for.
okay.
We struggle to not use any one-time revenue in the operating budget to support ongoing expense. So, at some point in the not-too-distant past, there was free cash in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that was used to balance the budget. That's a dangerous proposition, because if the following year you don't have that free cash to support the budget, you now have that couple $100,000 hole you've got to figure out. So we haven't done that now for three and a half budgets. We've not used any outside one-time revenue. They do that as a matter of course. So their E&D is the equivalent of our free cash. So they're using what is in essence one-time revenue to support their ongoing operating budget. It's generally not a good idea to do that, but they don't really have a choice, because they're in a cycle where they're generating 5+%, so they're spending it. I would posit, spend it, budget it, and don't have it generate up again the next year. I mean, if you know you're getting it year to year,
It's a self-fulfilled prophecy.
yeah, it is. It's just,
Yeah.
and again, I can't say I wouldn't do the same, but then you have the ability to say, and we're using some of our savings to buy down your assessment. And that's good of us, isn't it? But no, because it's all of our money anyway. And it's just churning from one year to the next.
Exactly. I mean, one could look at it as we've been over-assessed, okay?
Correct.
Because being allowed to, I mean, how much are we allowed to have in our stabilization?
I don't know that there's a cap on how much we're allowed to have.
But what do they recommend? They recommend around what, 5%?
5% on free cash.
On
Yeah,
free
the recommendation is
cash.
about 5% on free cash.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's not necessarily what they're recommended. That's their cap. They're not allowed to go beyond 5, because basically that means they're overtaxing, if you will.
Right. Which goes to the whole philosophical thing about people look at,
Exactly.
you generated
cash.
$5 million in free cash. Aren't you awesome?
No.
No, we're taxing you too much.
Exactly, exactly.
So yeah, a more accurate assessment and less generation on the E&D is a truer picture of what you got going on instead of what we're doing now.
So do you, because this is really the piece that you were going to talk about a little bit in your report, do you want us to make a formal vote?
No, I think it's been
Okay.
pretty clear. I think we're in a public meeting of record on TV.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I heard Wayne say those aren't the words I even want to use, so I think I get where he's going.
Okay. All righty.
And one last thing on the budget document, two things.
Oh,
If you go
yeah.
to the revenue projection page, which will get you back to page 59,
Getting to know this by heart, are you?
still not yet, but 59, you'll see there's these bottom 4 lines that are entitled non-operating available funds
Okay.
are new. Those didn't exist in the earlier iteration of this document, and this comes from a conversation Sue and I had.
They actually used to be they used to be all together.
Right, there used to be the line and
But they were
shows zeros,
blank.
because we don't use them in the operating budget, because we shouldn't. Sue's point was for transparency, to be able to show that when you see the words free cash and a zero, that doesn't mean we don't have free cash. It just means it's not being used in the operating budget. So she wanted it reflected someplace, so this is my crack at that. I don't know if it does what you want, Sue.
Yes, it does.
But it doesn't show them above that line where it says estimated revenues for the operating budget, but just non-operating available funds. And it's a snapshot in time, so you'll see it
And it's
doesn't project out.
just so that everyone knows what we do have in the bank, if you will.
I would probably, looking at this, just the optics of it, I'd probably even put more spaces in between and drag that down further on the page.
Yes, that would be fine.
So it doesn't blend in. And the last thing that I would draw to your attention is a couple of pages forward. Yes, on page 57. With some of the work that's been done since we last met, the biggest, obviously, of which is roughly $550,000 reduction in the requested school assessment. If you look in the fiscal 20 surplus or deficit, with the reduction to the 5% for the school
Where
department
are we?
ask. Page 57, very bottom of the page.
Yeah,
Fiscal year 2020 column, it shows that this budget that's before you now is actually 12,000 in
no,
surplus.
I'm in the wrong page 57, that's what it
It's
was.
2 page 57.
Yes,
Is there?
yes,
It goes 57,
second.
58, 57.
Awesome.
that's okay.
So on the real page.
Okay,
Yeah, I got you.
okay, that's fine.
And then 258's in.
All right, again, I'm sorry.
Yep, so right in the fiscal 2020 column, bottom of the page, this document as it exists before you is 12,464 to the good. And that's driven largely, if not almost entirely, on the reduction of the $550,000 in the school assessment. It's not real. This is not a real document unless until the presumptions that serve as the underpinnings come to pass.
Okay.
And that still includes the 2 and 2.5 on all positions. So if you back some of that out, we could actually get in the position, which is where we should be considering, of leaving some available tax levy untapped on the table in case it's ever needed down the line during the fiscal year.
What's the recommendation for something like that?
I don't know that there's a hard and fast recommendation. I think if you look at communities that are AAA rated, you'll see that there's excess capacity left on the table. I know you talk about the Arlington budget sometimes. Look at what they've got baked into their model. There's always available capacity left on the table. I know a year ago we left, 100 or so. The year before
Yeah, I
that.
couldn't remember, 90,
Yeah.
something like that,
It got
wasn't it?
changed on town meeting floor, but that was our goal, and then
Yeah.
we changed it.
Yeah, somebody made a motion.
Ended up being like 50 or 60, but.
Yeah, somebody made a motion for 30 grand on the floor at town meeting, but, so I'd like to get there. I guess that's the point, is we were, 8, 6, 500 out of balance. The work that's been done since then gets us to now where if this were to pass, we'd be 12 to the good. I think we need to get a little better than that. That's all.
Yeah, 12's a little tight.
Yeah, that's literally, it's fractions of a penny on the tax rate at that point.
Okay, thank you. You guys all set?
All set, thank you.
See you tomorrow night?
See you tomorrow night. Okay, 3.1, appoint Ryan LaPierre to the Townsend Water Department as a water foreman contingent upon the passing of a Cory check and medical exam with a 1-year probationary period.
Move the board appoint Ryan LaPierre to the Townsend Water Department as a water foreman contingent upon passing of a Cory check and a medical exam with a 1-year probationary period.
Second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the one piece left hanging on this that Paul raised was the interest in the Water Commission is to bring this person in within the grade that you have classified the position, but at a higher step than introduction or even the first 3. Now, in my conversation, I think with you, Sue, last week, just briefly on this, I went back and looked through the policies to see if there's anything that says you can only do 1 through 3. I know that's generally been kind of what's the rule of thumb. There's nothing that states that. Moreover, in the union contract, which would trump that policy anyway, it just says at a classification based on the board's decision. So you've decided that it's a grade 8 classification. There's nothing that would prohibit you from bringing the person in if to retain them or recruit them, I should say, this is what it takes. So you
How much
have the
money?
ability, $30.48, which would be a grade 8, which you graded at level 6.
And what would it be if we stayed within what is normally done?
First 3, you'd think I'd have brought that with me.
And we're bringing him in at a higher just because of his certifications?
I can go back 7,
I think level 1 was 26.
if you go
94 or
7.5 points backwards from there would be the grade 3, so.
So you think that's worth it with what he has, with what this person has?
Well, when I considered what he's requesting, what he's currently making, and where the board currently graded him at, that's what I proposed. He requests, obviously, you don't get everything you want, but he requested $30, so rather than go down, I went to the closest increase to that would be $30.48, level 6. Ironically, he does currently make exactly what level 5 is, so if you want to take that in consideration through his probationary period,
I'd support the 30.48 for what it's worth. You've not asked my opinion on it, but I think for what he is, the licenses he has, we've been chasing our tail in that we've been hiring folks out of necessity that didn't yet have the licenses. And, Kevin keeps a great example. I mean, he's busted his hump to get, his
since
stuff done.
November, he's got his hydraulics license, treatment 1, and D1 license. And I currently have him in classes now for D2.
I know RJ was going through the process as well. So the fact that this guy has the tickets plus, right? He's got what's required plus in terms of certifications. I think we often shoot ourselves in the foot when we quibble over the 48 cents or whatever.
Okay,
the
so
delta
this
will
is a union position in the regular
be. Correct. In the highway water
highway water.
unit, correct.
I'm fine with it.
That was my
Okay.
confusion, whether he would fall within the highway water or a foreman position, would he be, fall within a supervisory?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
the equivalent is in the highway unit currently, there is a foreman's position. And Keith, until very recently, was holding the foreman's position in that same group, so
Okay.
because there are two foremen, it makes sense that they'd be there.
And usually you don't try not to mix people that have true reporting responsibility. Even though a foreman oversees the work of others, it's not like reporting responsibility.
This is a working foreman position,
Correct.
so.
Yeah, I mean, where you're truly the person that these guys report to.
Right.
Versus a foreman tends to be watching what other people are doing.
Yeah, that's fine.
but-
I was just,
But not reporting responsibility. Yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with it. You need a vote on that part?
Please, yes.
And how would you like that worded?
Move that the board vote to offer the starting salary of grade 8, level 6, $30.48 to the
8-6.
water foreman.
And would the board approve the position at a grade 8, level 6 at $30.48 an hour?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Lindsay, start.
You all set?
I was just going to ask if the request the board consideration to take my other article right after this, kind of out of order.
So if you look down to 4.5, there's a request to declare the water technician position vacant and authorize the water superintendent to post for the vacancy.
We can move down to 4.5.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
I move the board declare the water technician position vacant and authorize the water superintendent to post for the vacancy.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're all set, Paul.
Great, thank you.
Good night.
Welcome.
When does he start?
Ryan, well, let's see how the meeting turned out tonight. He will give his notice
Okay,
tomorrow, the following day.
so within a month.
Yep,
Okay, good.
Okay.
thank you.
Good night.
4.1, review response from ABCC investigator regarding the change of manager for VFW Post 6538 and review approved draft letter to notify. 4.1, give me a second. Okay, Jim,
Yes.
what we got going here?
If it please the board, I know Carolyn was working most closely on this issue, on the licensing side of the house. So Carolyn, you want to give kind of the brief overview?
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, spoke with Sue about it earlier. There is legal opinion, legal advice from Adam in there. The ABCC basically has written back and stated that they could not approve the change of manager because they had not changed the corporation first, or the board members. So they need to do that first. Adam suggested we notify them. Right now, they're not really operating under a license that's valid because the corporate structure has not been filed with the state. However, he thought a more expedient way to handle things was to notify them that they need to comply with what the ABCC investigator stated first, and then follow up with a change of manager
So,
process.
is the letter here?
It is, it's just a draft,
Got the one on the back.
yes,
Okay.
last page.
This?
And Adam thought that was fine.
No.
Nope. Should be the very last.
Back page of that one. Right there.
Oh, got it.
I know.
Oh, I see it, all right.
I put all three because I know you weren't thrilled about signing it by yourself. But we can
Yeah.
change that too. We've never had this happen before, so that's why I reached out to Adam to see what the board should do.
I mean, obviously, they have to do what they have to do before ABCC will even record them.
Right.
Okay, I'd say we get this letter out right away.
Need a motion? I move the board authorize the town administrator to send communication to VFW.
We're actually voting to sign.
Oh, sign. Sign and submit.
Okay, second. Any other discussion?
Do you want me to revise and have Jim's signature, or do you want to sign it?
No, I said vote and sign. We'll
Okay,
sign it.
okay.
That's fine. Yeah, the motion was to vote and sign.
And Jim did check with Adam to be sure we didn't have any liability attached to us. As we know, the current manager did not want to be on that license.
Yeah, the current listed manager at the ABCC is no longer even an employee. And
No
there's-
longer an employee of the V.
Right, so there's
Okay.
no liability that runs to the town. You're providing notice through this letter and letting them know that two things need to be done. One is the vote of the board, and then the
And they have to
change of
submit that to
manager. They
ABCC.
can submit them concurrently, but
Yeah.
the ball's in their court.
Okay. Thank you. 4.2, discuss one-day special license request for the VFW in consideration of the correspondence received from ABCC. I would like to pass over 4.2 until all this other stuff is taken care of.
Well, the reason I put that on there, Sue, I know you can't, I didn't process the licenses at all. At one of the last meetings, you had asked for us to check to be sure that the commander could have the one-day licenses in his name, and we wrote to the ABCC, and they said, yes, that's what they
Okay.
recommended. So those licenses did go out. Since we've received new, and he's not the commander on record with the ABCC, I didn't know if you wanted me to notify them that we can't process them until... Okay.
Yeah, that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're passing over it until all of that is
Okay, so
straightened
I'll
out. Please notify them.
Okay.
Thank you. You okay with that? 4.3, review request to designate a representative to the MBTA Advisory Board. I didn't even know that we...
Is that why you asked me what our assessment was?
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder where that came from.
Well, it's like, do I have some skin in this game or what, you know? Apparently, we have a bill that we get from the MBTA, even though the MBTA doesn't go through Townsend, and we're assessed, how much was it? I can't remember what you
I'll
said.
tell you right now, it's a couple $4,000, I think. Let me get there in a
But we
second.
do have an assessment that we get from them that was worked out a while ago. And actually, I was talking to Rep. Harrington about it, and she said that it was all part of an agreement to make sure that we were able to keep the trains running out of Leominster.
And
the
Fitchburg.
Leominster, Fitchburg,
Right.
and Ayer, because there was talk about them stopping that whole thing like down at Acton. So I do know that there are a lot of folks from here that use the train to go into town, so I guess that's reasonable.
And it's not an insignificant assessment, it's $19,169.
Yeah, I didn't think it was insignificant. But, so we get a bill for that.
Come over a cherry sheet?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just letting us, appointing one of us to be able to go if we want to?
Yeah, you want to do it?
Not really.
It
You
says,
asked the
it says or designee.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody you think is an appropriate designee, not me. Did I say that?
I don't see any other volunteers in the room. Carolyn's not raising her hand.
I'd have to take the train.
Oh, I mean, where are their meetings? In Boston, really?
Yeah.
No. You can put me down, they can send me correspondence if they want to, but I'm not going.
Gotcha.
They already get $19,000 from us.
And if there's something in particular that comes up and you can't make it,
Carolyn usually,
I could run. if it
Okay.
came to it, so.
okay, thank you. So do we need a vote on that?
It'd be good to have it, just so we can send them.
Okay. Motion, Mr. Miller, to designate,
No one.
no, you can designate me.
I move the board designate Sue Lizio as the representative to the MBTA Advisory Board.
And Mr. Kreidler is the alternate.
Mr. Kreidler as the alternate.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4.4, board discussion to review and/or revise approved town administrator job description consistent with the town charter, continued from 2:15 meeting. Where are you with this, Wayne? Because I know you were gone for a week or so.
Yeah. I know Jim had looked for the Word document for the job description.
Yeah, didn't come across the Word document
Carolyn did.
anywhere. Carolyn did she did a conversion. I never sent it to you.
No, I don't have it. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know
Want to type?
I don't know what we have in the folder for next week, but can we potentially move this onto next week? Because if Wayne's not ready,
And he's not ready because I didn't send him something, not because he was.
but that's okay.
derelict.
That's okay. 40 lashes and we're done, that's all.
Make me attend the MBTA meetings.
Yes, I will. Okay, so I'm going to
Like
put
Mike.
this in my folder for next week. And we did 4.5, 4.6, notice of award regarding Community Opportunities Group for CDBG Grant Administration Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll recall that 6 months ago now, we received notice that we had been granted $800,000 Community Development Block Grant.
Did you give backup
Funds.
for that?
No, there's no backup at all, and that's what I'm going to tell you right
Okay.
now, is, while that was wonderful news, the fine print, one of the conditions was that we were not able to use MRPC as the
That's right.
program administrator.
Oh, yeah.
They wrote the grant. You remember that Mr. Keating came before you a couple different times at the public hearings, but for some stuff that went on in another place, they were disallowed from doing program administration. So we had to put an RFP out, request services. We got no responses until the day after, which we couldn't accept, so we had to go back out again. And that closed last week. We had one respondent, Community Opportunities Group. They actually come recommended by DHCD. Had a meeting last week with them here on site. And the way the process works is they have to present the DHCD-approved contract to DHCD for DHCD to sign. Then it comes to us. Ideally, because we're already 6 months gone, they didn't want to have to wait another week or two if they were able to get that taken care of. So they were hoping that you'd authorize, when DHCD approves that state form document, that I'd be able to sign it so they can hit the ground running.
Okay. So we need a motion to authorize the town administrator to,
Do the notice of award and execute, the 4.7, the very next one is the same thing. It's just the second piece. Vote to authorize the TA to execute the standard form contract with Community Opportunities Group for grant administration services and any sub-grantee agreements under said grant.
Move the board vote to authorize town administrator to execute the standard form contract with Community Opportunities Group for grant administration services and any subsequent agreements under said grant.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4.8, open, close the annual and special town meeting warrant. All annual warrant articles are due by March 1st, which is Friday,
Correct.
in
I'm sure
accordance with the town bylaw.
There's a document, I don't know if
Yes.
they made it to you there.
Yes.
But this would be a recommended motion if it meets your approval. And just to go over it, would be to set the special and annual town meeting date, May 7th. That's the first available Tuesday that we have, which is the requirement. At 7 PM, Memorial Hall, 272 Main Street, Townsend, Mass. And to set the deadline for warrant articles for March 1st, 2019 for annual town meeting per the bylaw. and April 2nd, so another month out, for special town meeting warrant articles, and to post the special and annual town meeting on April 23rd, which is 2 weeks prior, which is the requirement under the law. And this next one is new, and it's only if you'd like to do it, but to hold a mock STM or ATM on the week before, which would be the 30th. I didn't put the date in, I apologize. It'd be 4:30. And that's not, it's not in the Memorial Hall with all the pomp and circumstance. It's literally sitting at this table, and anybody that has an interest coming in and be able to go over the warrant articles with them. So,
We have questions.
yeah, so if there are questions that can be answered in advance, it helps us in case we're not prepared to answer it. We need to do some research. It helps folks because they feel like it's less of a pressure situation with the cameras on and everybody in the room. I've done it in another community before, and it's pretty helpful. So if it's your wish, I'd like to try to
We
pull
could
something
try
like
it.
that
I
off,
don't think it would
too.
hurt.
We can try it.
And then
When
lastly-
did you want to do that?
That'd be April 30th. That'd be so you'd have three Tuesdays running. You'd have the posting on the 23rd, the mock on the 30th, and the meeting on the 7th.
Okay.
And the last bullet, to hold the STM and ATM on May 7th, 2019.
What's the difference between number one and the last one?
None.
So can we get rid of the last one?
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing in the first, right?
Yep.
And just for clarification, for me and others, when we say the deadline for warrant articles is March 1st, which is Friday of this week, that means for any other board or committee, or does that include the selectmen?
The selectmen always have the ability, because legally, by statute, it's your warrant. So
Okay.
you can take things up to and including the day it's got to be posted.
So if somebody doesn't make the Friday deadline.
You have
and
discretion.
They would have to come to us to ask us to put it on.
Correct.
Okay, just to make sure that it's
And that
clear.
includes petitions for,
Petitions, that I don't know. We've had a couple of citizen petitions, 3 of them on a special town meeting once, that I recall, that because it was a special, there was no deadline other than the 2-week posting notice. We've not had one for an annual yet, so I don't know how that March 1st date would play against
Okay.
a petition. I know that we had a call today from a gentleman who's looking to do a petition for the the annual town meeting for a prohibition on plastic bags in town, very much like what the town of Lunenburg did. And I don't know the details, but I believe there was also discussion, Carolyn, perhaps you know, today about a petition article for the annual town meeting related to charter reference to the recall special act. So those two, to the extent that
So you're going to put placeholders in for those?
well, I was told by the proponent of the plastic bags that he'd have the stuff in time for Friday, and I didn't speak to the proponent of the recall one. That was something that's handled in the clerk's office, but I gather they're going to have that done too. It only requires 10 signatures for the annual.
Yeah.
okay.
And what about charter review? We got a placeholder for that?
Yep, there's a couple placeholders in the folder already. Charter review is one of them.
Okay. So, I think that's the only question I had. You all set?
Yep.
Do you want to just do a motion for the whole thing?
I can read it.
Okay.
I move the board vote the following: to set the special town meeting and annual town meeting dates for May 7th at 7 PM, Memorial Hall, 272 Main Street, Townsend, Mass. To set the deadlines for warrant articles, March 1st, 2019 for annual town meeting per town bylaw, and April 2nd, 2019 for special town meeting. To post for special and annual town meetings on April 23rd, 2019, and to hold a mock STM, ATM on April 30th at Memorial Hall.
Been moved, yeah, second. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. here so I can put that on my calendar. That's done. 5.1, review, approve updated policy for use of legal counsel. This is the second reading. Any changes?
I move the board approve updated policy for use of legal counsel, second reading.
And I'll second that. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're talking.
Jim?
Yes. Working off of the copy of the report that's in your packets, personal updates, there are none. Took care of a couple of personnel issues with the water department earlier. Financial updates, fiscal 20 budget. We've already had the verbal update, but I did want to just highlight the section that's in bold. Going to be having budget review opportunities for the board and the finance committee each Saturday from 9 to 11 and each Tuesday from 4 to 6 between now and town meeting. So it could be that no one shows, it could be that a sub-quorum shows. I think I may recommend that you post
I
a
would-
block
I
of
would-
dates, and the
Yeah.
finance committee do the same in case a quorum shows.
Yep.
If it's not a quorum, then great, then there's no issue, but in case there is, just to be covered.
Yeah, apparently the only time that there's an issue is if that sub-quorum, example, last Saturday, we had a posted meeting to talk about budget. I was the only select person there, so it's sub-quorum. There were 3 members of the FinCom there that represented a sub-quorum, but I don't think they had even posted because they weren't expecting everybody to go. And we just kind of went through the budget and talked about it, and talked mostly about the school. The point of the open meeting law is, and so we just called it a work session and talked through the budget. Kathy had sent something out talking about checking with the open meeting law folks. And it's very specific. I had to read it 3 times, and poor Carolyn had to listen to me trying to decipher it. But I finally did and checked with town council. And the stipulation is, if I were to have this discussion and take it upon myself to then take that information and share it with Wayne outside of a meeting, outside of a posted meeting, then it's an open meeting law violation, because we're having a conversation and now I'm repeating that conversation. But I don't talk to Wayne outside of a meeting, other than, "Hi, Wayne, how are you?" if I see him coming out of the drugstore. So it's not an issue as long as the discussion that takes place also takes place in a subsequent posted meeting, okay? So I think the thing that, if we were to televise all of those, that would be another story, because, that would mean that it's open to whomever wants to see it. But
And if they're
I think
posted,
we're
if they're
okay.
posted going forward, then the public has notice and they can come sit if they wish to spend a Tuesday
Mm-hmm.
evening or a Saturday morning doing so.
So can we post,
Yeah, I'll do the calendar of those Tuesdays and Saturdays and we'll get a posting up.
okay, and in between, Carolyn, we have the all boards meeting.
And that's been posted.
That's been posted for March.
The next 2 Saturdays are posted.
Okay, so this coming Saturday, are you going to be available?
I believe so.
Okay, so, and we're posted, okay, so I'll be here, you'll be here, good. And the FinCom folks, a couple of them have been popping in too. And the following week is the all boards meeting. Have we gotten any responses on that?
I don't believe so yet.
I sent notice out to the chairs of all the boards, and I haven't, except John did, I'm sorry. He did, he's gonna be a little late, he had something. to do in the morning, so he's hoping to be there by 10:30.
Okay, all right,
Was that a tickler up?
okay. Yeah, just a reminder, that's all. Did you put that on the website too? Was that
It's
something?
just on the calendar, but I could do like an announcement on the Board of Selectmen's page, and on all boards.
Or front page even,
Okay.
okay? That'd be great,
I did
thanks.
put the Selectmen were meeting Saturday mornings for budget on the front page.
That's what I saw the other day, yeah.
So I'll put the all boards on there. too.
Yep, thank you. All right, what else you got?
Okay, then we get to project updates. We referenced earlier the Greenville Road Bridge project, very briefly. The project itself is scoped by the engineers at between $778,000 and $846,000. I write, to the great credit of the highway superintendent and Lee, his administrative support staff member, we've been awarded a $500,000 grant towards the project. There's a balance of $278 to $364 remaining. It's an exceptional opportunity to have 60+% of the project paid by the state. We need to discuss a potential special article on the annual town meeting warrant. Bottom line is, it's our bridge. This isn't a state bridge. This is something that is our responsibility, and it's pretty.
It needs to be replaced.
It's pretty rough. So, I can present for your next meeting a couple of different options. One being just a straight outright free cash hit. We've got 600 and some odd thousand sitting in free cash. We've already talked about 250 being dedicated towards the pavement management plan. Then we have snow and ice, so that will probably die a pretty quick death looking at it that way. The other is a borrow. So I can run a very short debt schedule on what a borrow would look like for that purpose. And lastly would be a one-year cap exclusion. So unlike an override that gets voted and lives forever, or a debt exclusion that lasts for the term of the loan, you can also do a capital exclusion, which is just a one-time, one-year blip to cover it. So I'll lay out each of those options at your next meeting so you can get a peek. But given that it's ours, and given that it's in the condition it's in, and given that we have $500,000 on the table from the state, I think we've got to pick something.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, pavement management plan. Jim touched on that very briefly, but expecting that by this time next week, we're going to have that in hand. This is the update to the November of 2015 pavement management plan that shows all the roads in the town of Townsend by priority based on some of the variables we talked about at the prior meetings. If it's a state numbered route, if it's a route for public safety to a hospital, if it's a school bus route, and those types of things. There's a formula that goes into giving it a rating in terms of its level of importance for all of those factors. They get rated based on that, takes the politics out of whose neighborhood it is. It's all based on the data. And then I think, to Jimmy's credit, instead of just getting that report with estimates for what it would cost, he's actually concurrently been working with our contract paving company to take our existing contract rates and roll the documents in together, so we have actual, instead of estimates on what the plan will cost, we have real numbers based on existing figures that we have in our
All right,
contract.
but it's not assumed that our current paving company is the paving company that will do this.
It is, because they are contracted for a number of years. So
Okay.
Keatings is with us for the next, I believe, 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the question then becomes, how do you fund something like this? Because we can expect it's not going to be an inexpensive proposition. When you look at item 4 in my report on that first page under miscellaneous updates, you'll see road finance plan discussion. Pavement management funding plan as it's currently laid out, and that's in the document, the budget document that we've gone over in some detail tonight. There's consideration for $50,000 in excise taxes in year 1. And the plan would be to grow that by an additional 50 each year until it hits the $250,000 mark over the 5th year. Adding to that free cash allocation of $250 and our standard $500,000 in Chapter 90, we'd see the $800,000 figure available by July 1st, 19th, conceivably, without any tax rate impact. Obviously, that amount of money isn't going to do the plan. It's going to do some stuff, and a nice bit of work, but it's not going to come close to touching the plan. So, reading in the report, we'll need to know the costs detailed in the report we're receiving to determine how much, if any, at all, of a debt exclusion we would need to seek to fund the plan moving forward. The subject will be ripe for more detailed discussion at your next meeting. So once we have the total number, and we know that it's X million dollars, and it could be phased over 3 years at X per year, we can run the table and see what a debt exclusion to fund that amount per year for the 3-year plan, less the amount of cash we'd have on hand pursuant to this other policy that we've laid out, or it's not a policy, it's a plan. And then the people can make that call.
The way that I recall the, hearing what Lunenburg did was the plan itself, not the financial plan, but the plan itself says, all right, so I've got roads that are graded from 1 to 5 in terms of good to horrible.
Yep.
Okay? It was a multi-phased plan where I take the horrible rating first and using all of the criteria. So I've got these horrible rating things that obviously need a lot of work
Right.
to get them up to standard. At the same time, I have some that I might have just done a year or two ago. So they're the ones that Jim was talking about, putting lines on, okay? That you may want to do a little bit of a coating or something to keep them in good repair, because the reason we have all of those 5s are because we haven't done anything to them in between to keep them in
Yep.
good repair.
Yep.
So it's a combination of keeping what you have good while you start attacking the really bad, hoping that by the time the 3 years goes by, you've caught everything up, and that your funding plan at that point becomes
Maintenance.
maintenance.
Absolutely.
Okay? And it works.
And it will be $1 million at that point. I mean, after year 4, you'll have $1 million available for maintenance.
So I guess my question is, when I'm looking at this, we would have 800,000 available effective July.
Correct.
But is the idea to use that to begin the actual work?
It will depend. We will know what happens at town meeting and the subsequent ballot vote. If at the town meeting and the subsequent ballot vote, an override passes to do something larger than that $1 million,
A debt exclusion?
right, then we know that the plan gets implemented. If it goes down in flames, then we use that money to do what we can do.
Okay. But at least if worst-case scenario, and believe me, I believe it's the worst-case scenario, would be we would have some local funds
Correct.
to be contributing, which we haven't always done in the past.
Correct.
I'm certainly hoping that people are going to support a debt exclusion to get this going. I think our town looks like, it just does not look nice anymore, you know? And it's nobody's fault, and it's not for lack of trying, but,
I saw the Facebook meme, because that's where life is on Facebook, a picture of the roads in Pompeii that are however many thousands of years old, and the roads in New England, and it just made the point that, yeah, it's bad everywhere.
oh, it's bad everywhere, but I think that the communities that care about their community invest in it too, so. Help property values too. I don't know who's gonna wanna come in and buy a house.
That's an interesting point, and when Brad Morgan and I talked today, the superintendent talked about, the value of a good educational system to a community. People that will invest in a community and
number
move here,
one.
look for good education to raise their family, and that there's value to that we all need to be aware of when we're talking about how much is being spent on education. The tricky underside of that is if education is failing because you're not adequately funding it, and your property values go down because of that, you're not getting taxed less. We're still getting the same amount of money from you because the formula allows that offset. If the property tax rate is high, then the value per thousand is low. And if the value dips, then the tax
The
rate
rate
goes up.
goes up.
We're always getting that same
You're
amount.
still going to get taxed the same amount of money.
So, there are those that think, well, it doesn't bother me if the education, I'll get a savings in my tax bill.
You
No,
don't,
you won't.
though. You don't. So, that's an important part of it. Okay, I'd be anxious to see, I'm hoping this can go on our agenda for next week.
Yes, that's the plan. And next, you have an IT update. As of today, Bassam provides the following, and he'll be at not your meeting on the 5th, but the one after on his budget. But regarding the network infrastructure servers implementation, it's nearly set to deploy both vendors, state vendors. One is Acuity and the other is Winslow Technology Group. They've submitted proposals for comparison regarding the network work. And Acuity, with the scope of on-site data center utilizing 120-volt existing power that we have, they propose off-site cloud-based setup with a monthly subscription of $1,490 per month for 4 terabytes. I'm reading words, but I don't know what these mean.
That's all right.
Just to be fair.
That's a lot.
Winslow, on the other side, is also on-site data center. They propose upgrading the power in our space downstairs to the 220 to 240 volts and having local recovery and disaster backup in town, but at another site. So to avoid the monthly fee of the $1,490. And their proposal is includes the provision of 12 terabytes, which is 3 times our current.
So what's the cost of that?
Their cost is of course, I've not got that part written in here.
I mean, it's one thing saying
There's no monthly fee. That's part of their proposal up above what I'm going to get to in a second on email. So this is just for the backup portion. Acuity would be $1,490 per month for 4 terabytes. Winslow would be included in their price above that I'm going to read you, and for 12 terabytes. The difference is Acuity is cloud-based and Winslow is local but off-site. So it could be that, there's a off-site in the police station.
But
We've
who
got
maintains it?
redundancy. It's maintained by Winslow, whereas Acuity would have a third-party vendor outside of themselves doing it.
And just to explain the difference between the two, is cloud-based is you're having a server that's a virtual server, basically.
Right.
The hardware in the second one will require replacement in 2 to 3 years.
I know, but it also requires somebody to do maintenance on it or whatever.
Correct, because you have to do a manual backup every day.
That's what I'm saying.
So it's-
So you need a person too.
Well, that's what our IT staff, one of their tasks would be to do. They're currently doing it on whatever we've got piecemealed together today. The reason I bring those two up is looking at the $1,490 per month for the cloud-based through Acuity versus handling it in-house without that monthly. So it becomes a cost-benefit analysis on whether you want the long-term $1,490.
Yeah, but to Wayne's point, you've also got hardware that you're going to have to replace.
Certainly.
You're paying that $1,400 a month for something that you don't have to worry about it. It's automatically going to get upgraded. I mean, that's why Office 365 works. It's because you don't have to worry about, oh God, I got to get an upgrade and is my computer going to take it and
The cloud base is the industry standard now, so.
yeah,
And he is looking for you to give that direction.
as far as I'm concerned, he has it. I don't know about.
Okay. And then on email proper, Acuity proposal is Office 365. It's $12,900 for 30 email accounts. And that would be also having an annual subscription of $2,280 That would be spam protection, data loss prevention, encryption, advanced threat protection, archiving with 50 gigabyte storage per email account. Okay. Winslow is also Office 365. Instead of $12,900, it's $6,755, and instead of 30 accounts, it's 40. Similarly, they have an annual subscription. It's $1,000 more. It's $3,200 per year, and that's a Microsoft Total solution. It includes data backup, spam protection, data loss prevention, encryption, advanced threat protection, unlimited archiving, which I was asked to underline, and 100 gigs of storage per email account instead of just 50.
That's a lot to try to have my little head absorb at this
I'm
time
gonna
of the night.
I'm gonna email this to you, and at our meeting 1 week from tonight, we'll,
I'd like to see both bids.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I wanted to be able to speak to him today and say, give me
Yes.
what is the most current
Yeah.
as of today.
I'd actually like to see that side by side.
My only question back to him would be, since we're talking about two different bids essentially, is one connected to the other? So is the email connected to the cloud-based?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've got Charlie Brown teacher all over the words coming out of your mouth. I'm just hearing wah, 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 wah.
Bassam will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Essentially, they're
I know
received two bids.
because you're
Would you like me to see if he can
Oh,
come
we're talking
next week?
We're talking about cloud-based backup and stuff on this, but we just talked about giving him direction for cloud-based
Mhm.
for other stuff. So that's what's confusing. It's like,
Well, you can't have one without the other, so these bids might be tied to each other, I guess is my point, to work
oh, yeah,
correctly.
that could be.
So I know you don't have the answer to
Yeah,
that.
and
but that's-
I'll see that, Carolyn, do you have any reason to believe that he can't be here on the 5th?
Only that they have appointments going all the way up to 8 o'clock already. They have town council, they have like 4 budget hearings.
It's a nasty week
And they
again.
have a joint meeting that has to be posted for the
Right.
housing.
Right.
What's your week look like next week?
Monday, Tuesday, or not, I'm not here. Wednesday's bad.
Well, Tuesday we have a meeting,
I'll be back Tuesday night, but
okay?
Thursday and Friday,
You booked Wednesday night,
yes.
Thursday?
Yep, I can do that one. I can do that as of right now.
Conversely, I could see if he can come in on the Saturday, just for
It's gonna be a 10-minute discussion.
a run, quick rundown on, we're already gonna be here on Saturday on budget issues, so.
And Bob's up there
Well-
during the day too.
I
How
can-
about this, okay? Can I just authorize the liaison with IT to meet offline and then come, just
Awesome.
update us?
Even just a
or-
phone call
I'll
or-
I'll
I can
authorize,
pop in the
Yeah.
next couple days.
you know,
Better yet, good.
okay? And Wayne can take care of that offline and you guys can update it.
Excellent. And next we have board legislative priorities. Senator Tran has reached out to solicit requests from the board for priorities for the next legislative session. It'd be helpful for members to create their own list of priorities and bring them to the next meeting for discussion, vote, and forwarding to the senator.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I've worded it this way is last year, we got the notice with very short window to do something. We put the Hart Library together because it seemed like an obvious thing
And
to
how
do.
much time do we have for this one?
I'd say within the next couple of weeks, we should get something into them.
Can we send a note to the other board chairs
Sure.
and department heads? Okay? Because this is not our gig, this is your gig.
Yeah.
All right? Can you make sure that everybody knows that, if they have needs,
Right.
push them back up to you?
The point I would leave you with is, just want to make sure that we don't put things together that people think are really good, that the board just doesn't have any interest in either. The Hart Library was a great example where, on a staff level, it seemed like the thing to do, but it didn't, when push came to shove, it
Well,
didn't meet.
the thing that's confusing to me is, and the other, all right, two points. Senator Tron has reached out Sheila always reaches out as well,
Yep.
okay? They hit things from two different places, and that's fine.
Yep.
And they support each other, which is fine. But what would help us is to know what kinds of things is the state working on right now?
Right.
You know, because I try to keep up with it, but I don't know who's filed what bills and if there's something that we would want to get on top, onto.
But my understanding of what he's looking for here is more specific to local issues. So if you look at the things that were contained within the bond bills that he got authorized last year that he has since been able to wrestle free from the governor's office and deliver, they're things like park improvement or, a study, or I haven't seen any road work, flat out road work, but, those types of community-specific things.
Okay.
So that's why we had community-specific sidewalks, the monument, Veterans Monument, Heart Library, those types of things. So it could be,
Where are we at with the rail trail? Next November now?
They're at the end of their fundraising, I believe.
Yeah, they're supposed to be implemented by next
But I
year.
think it's next November, because they had a problem getting it through for this past November, right?
the conservation issues.
Conservation issues, which I hope we're not going to have next year, okay? But anyway, so it's due to start in November, and we still have that outstanding sidewalk thing. Maybe we'd say, you know what? Give us some sidewalks. You go to other places and there are sidewalks, and here,
Groton just got
there's,
an
right, and here there's kids walking on 119 from the high school to the harbor, and there's no sidewalks.
Is that the work that's already been done?
It's, yeah, I just put it there.
So, see if you can get us some sidewalks.
Gotcha. I think it's a great idea.
Do you like that,
And-
Wayne?
And incorporate within that some additional work out of the crosswalk down at Starlight, right, Wayne?
Yes, I want that, very much so.
I don't often go to McDonald's or buy there, but they have really nice solar-powered, if you look right at the school crosswalks now, they're solar-powered standalone.
We're the only town on 119 that doesn't have them. Because if you drive from Townsend to Acton, Groton has it, Acton has it.
Pepperell, Littleton,
has it.
yep.
We're the only place that doesn't have one of the busiest crosswalks in
Yeah.
town.
Yep.
So I find,
Oh, the way that they did it down at the high school, you mean?
yeah, the high school or in Groton, they have the solar powered ones. You push the button, the lights start flashing,
Right.
which is really what I want to see because you can't see.
Not just the crooked green sign.
Yeah,
You
I
drive
think the way that ended up happening had a lot to do with what DOT said it could get there. So, yeah,
I don't know how many people work at Starlight, but they all cross that street at some point during the 3 shifts.
And those lights are cheaper than an overpass.
Or somebody getting hit.
okay.
Don't I feel stupid now?
Anyway, that's my thought, our
Gotcha.
sidewalks.
Gotcha. All right. And lastly, unregistered motor vehicle update. Carolyn?
Actually, we went this with Sue. The letter was sent out certified for the extension in time, so that's coming up on March 6th. And the other was sent over to the deputy chief. I don't know, did you have a chance to?
Haven't gotten a response back from the deputy on it yet, so I can have that for you at your next meeting. That's the,
I mean, let's get going with some fines here if that's going to get something moving.
well, the folks are still within the grace that you've given them on the first complaint. That time's out on March 6th, so we'll know a little bit more within the next week here.
Because there's been no change on that one.
On Turnpike.
Yeah,
And I think the South Street one was all set, right?
South Street is fine.
So the issue is Turnpike. That was all sent
Well-
over to the deputy chief.
The one I was talking about was, what's the one off of Spalding?
Yeah, Willis Hill.
Wallace
Yes,
Hill?
they have till March 6th to go
Okay,
there.
okay, because nothing's been done there. I went
Okay.
by there.
It was sent out certified to the owner of the
Owner.
property and CC to the resident of the
Okay,
property.
all right.
And no one can say that you haven't tried
No,
to provide grace.
no.
So that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And where are we? Discussion warrant articles. Would you please put a placeholder for a warrant article for a five-member Board of Selectmen? It deserves to be talked about. Clerk, announcements for events. We have any?
Got nothing.
Okay. Board correspondence. District School Committee appointment. If there's anybody out there interested in, that was the Neshoba School Committee, right?
I put the correspondence in there for you.
That's that one. Okay, we have a memo from the superintendent of Neshoba Valley. Reminder that the position of alternate member representing the town of Townsend remains open for Neshoba Valley Tech District School Committee. The current term will expire March 2019. March 2019, that's
Even
this
doing?
month.
It's-
Yeah, next month, yeah.
That's next month. It's disappointing that, there are a number of kids that go to school at Neshoba, and we really need representation on that board. So I would hope that somebody out there is interested enough to raise their hand and say they want to be on that school committee and take out papers for it, because if this position is going to be open, it should be on the election.
This one's appointed, so.
That one's an appointed one?
Yes.
Okay, so they have to submit it to us with a volunteer form.
Yeah, it actually goes to the town moderator. He sets up the appointing committee, which
Oh,
consists
because
of
this is
you
the
as well.
alternate member.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. So,
And the moderator serves as the chairman of the appointing committee, so.
we need a volunteer, please. And MMA State Essay Contest, is that in the same? Yes, it is. I see it.
And I did send that off to the superintendent.
Just to let folks know, Mass Municipal Association, no, that's not it. Commit, my community.
You had it right down there.
No, that's the other one. Mass Municipal Association is pleased to announce the return of the annual MMA statewide essay contest for 8th graders. This has gone out to the schools. I hope all the 8th grade teachers are getting a copy of it. It's closing pretty soon, well, Friday, March 22nd, I believe, is the return.
The commitment block
End
for
of
the school
March.
would just have to be there by February 25th, and then the deadline for students is in March.
So, I know we've got some kids out there that are really good writers, and it would be nice to have members of our community eligible to win something like that. I think they're fully capable of it. Like to see lots of participation. And legislative breakfast meetings, if you're interested, Wayne, I wanted that in there, but I don't think there's anything I'm going to. Jim, are you interested in any of these?
I'm going to go to one of the legislative ones. I haven't looked at calendar yet.
Yeah.
Is there an Athol one?
There is March
There is.
29th, that's the
Yeah.
closest.
Where is Athol?
Route 2,
Oh, that's right, yeah,
as the sun sets.
as the sun sets. I don't know.
Are you signing up for that one?
I'd like to go.
Are you signing up for that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'll let you go to that, Jim.
I'll take the MBTA.
6.5, review and sign payroll and bills payable warrants.
Move the board review and sign the payroll and bills payable warrants outside of session.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Executive session. Want to read those, please?
Move the board move to executive session pursuant to GLC 30A S 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position or litigating position and the chair so declares.
She does.
Strategy session in preparation for negotiations for all collective bargaining contracts and personal service contracts. Executive session pursuant to GLC 30A.
Can we do these all together, or do you want this? All right.
To discuss strategy with respect to non-union personnel, RE, MOU, Deputy Police Chief. Executive session number 3, to pursuant to GLC 30A S 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of or litigation positions and the chair so declares.
Chair declares.
And number 4, executive session pursuant to GLC 30A S 21A5 to investigate charges of criminal misconduct or to consider the filing of criminal complaints.
Second. And we will not be,
And we will not be returning to open session.
thank you. I'll second that. Could I get a roll call, please?
Wayne Miller, yes.